For the first time in history, Oak Island faced a situation no one could have predicted. In the dead of night, U.S. officials moved in, sealing off the causeway and surrounding the island with federal teams. A quarantine order was quietly enforced, and suddenly, no one could enter or leave. Every researcher, contractor, and treasure hunter working on the island was forced into silence. The suddenness of the operation shocked everyone, leaving locals, enthusiasts, and even seasoned historians in disbelief. The question on everyone's mind was simple but chilling. What could justify such an intense, immediate reaction from the government? Witnesses reported that emergency lights flashed long after midnight, cutting across the trees and coastline. Others claimed to have seen strange crates being rushed off the island under heavy guard. Social media and forums exploded with speculation. The main question circulating everywhere was what had been discovered that made authorities act so quickly. This was not a precaution or a drill. Something deep beneath the money pit had been unearthed, something so startling and potentially dangerous that it forced a full-scale lockdown. Rumors began spreading about a sealed chamber that had been cracked open during the latest excavation. Some reports suggested it released something entirely unexpected, something Oak Island had never been meant to reveal. The silence from officials only made the situation more unnerving. Whatever was uncovered beneath the surface seemed capable of changing the entire investigation, rewriting what everyone thought they knew about Oak Island. For those who had been watching or working on the island, this was unlike anything in its long, mysterious history. The events began with a convoy moving onto the causeway just past midnight. No warnings, no media announcements, and no public information were provided. Residents initially thought it was a late-night filming crew, as Oak Island often had media presence. But when the line of black SUVs and government trucks stretched along the causeway, it became clear that this was far more serious. Vehicles moved with precision, stopping at specific points while officers stepped out and immediately began securing access roads. Within minutes, the previously peaceful Nova Scotia coastline had transformed into a highly controlled zone. Red and blue lights flashed continuously, cutting through the night. Armed federal officers, some in plainclothes and others in tactical gear unfamiliar to locals, created a perimeter around the island.
Anyone approaching was turned back with no explanation. Even those who had experienced past storms, evacuations, and previous Oak Island digs said they had never witnessed anything like this. The U.S. rarely intervened directly on Oak Island, especially without media coverage, so the sudden, secretive response raised serious questions about what was happening. Speculation among the public ran wild. Some believed it could be a major treasure discovery. Others feared a dangerous underground hazard, perhaps unstable or toxic. Still, no theory seemed to match the intensity of the events unfolding that night. Then, blurry footage captured by a resident across the bay intensified concerns. 2 large containers were moved off the island under heavy guard. Metallic, sealed, and unmarked, they were escorted by personnel wearing unrecognizable tactical clothing. No logos, no agency tags, nothing identified them. Whatever was inside was treated as highly dangerous, and the convoy disappeared into the night under tight security. The following morning, Oak Island awoke to barricades, patrolling officers, and strict warnings not to approach. Every attempt to ask questions met with the chilling phrase, "Area restricted, do not approach." For treasure hunters, historians, and Oak Island enthusiasts worldwide, the message was clear. Something had been found. Something extraordinary, strange, or potentially dangerous enough to justify this unprecedented level of secrecy and control. The midnight shutdown was only the beginning of what was to become one of the most shocking events in the island's history. Hours before the quarantine, the Laguna team had cracked open a hidden chamber deep beneath the surface. The chamber was unlike anything the team had encountered before. Over the years, countless cavities, wooden platforms, and water-filled pockets had been excavated, but this particular chamber felt different from the moment the drill pierced the limestone. Sensor readings spiked, pressure became unstable, and a hollow groaning sound echoed from below, as if something ancient had been disturbed for the first time in centuries. Rick Lagina stared at the monitors in disbelief. The chamber was not documented in any historical record, map, or excavation report. It was not a natural formation, nor could it have been built using primitive tools assumed to be available at the
time. But what terrified the team the most was the strange black particulate released when the drill pierced the chamber. It behaved like a liquid, drifting through the air, clinging to everything it touched. Within minutes, the situation spiraled out of control. Radios cut out mid-sentence, cameras flickered and went dark, and seismic equipment registered a sudden, unexplained burst of energy lasting only 0.6 seconds, but enough to trigger alarms across 3 systems. Team members were ordered to clear the shaft immediately, but by that time, the damage had already been done. The critical question remained: what exactly had been released when the chamber was breached? Could it have been a toxic gas, a mechanical trap, or something far stranger? According to a few terrified eyewitnesses, it was as if something was moving within the darkness itself. The quarantine order followed just 9 minutes after the chamber was breached, the fastest government response Oak Island had ever seen. This was no coincidence. It was a reaction to something the team had uncovered, something unknown and extremely dangerous. As armored vehicles sealed off the site and communication was shut down, rumors began spreading that the chamber was not empty. There was something inside. And what came next stunned everyone even further. Deep beneath the surface, the government recovered an object so powerful it justified the full lockdown. Within hours of the chamber breach, core members of the Lagina team disappeared from public view. Phones, cameras, and all devices containing documentation were seized. The entire Oak Island operation went dark, with no updates, interviews, or social media activity. For those following the story, it felt as if the island itself had swallowed the team whole. The artifact that triggered all of this was unlike anything ever seen on Oak Island. Partially embedded in the floor of the stone-lined chamber, it was wrapped in a strange alloy, one that did not match any known metal from the 1600s or 1700s. Its edges were razor-sharp, and its geometry precise, crafted with tools far more advanced than anyone believed existed in the period. Initially, the team assumed it was ceremonial or tied to the Knights Templar theories. However, once the object was fully revealed, those theories collapsed. Its construction techniques were not medieval, colonial,
or even historically consistent. This was something far ahead of its time. The government reacted swiftly and aggressively. Lead-lined containment crates were brought in, and the team was not allowed to photograph or touch the artifact. Those who tried to do so were escorted off the island under strict orders. The object's presence raised more questions than answers. Who had built it, and why was it hidden beneath Oak Island? Some speculated a lost civilization. Others hinted at ancient visitors or explorers with knowledge centuries ahead of their time. A confidential source suggested the artifact might not even be human-made. The full truth was unknown, and perhaps no one would ever be allowed to disclose it. Even more shocking was what happened when the artifact was removed from its resting place. Crew members reported a strange vibration, not sound, deep in their bones. Instruments went haywire. GPS units failed. Magnetometers spun wildly. Radios emitted a low, pulsing hum. Temperatures dropped instantly. Animals fled the island, and even the tides shifted unnaturally. A shimmering distortion appeared above the open chamber, bending light in a way that frightened everyone present. The artifact had activated something, and the effects were immediate and extreme. Authorities responded with incredible speed, expanding the containment perimeter, activating sirens, and isolating all personnel nearby. Some were sent into quarantine tents, while others were escorted off the island and never seen again. The artifact pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, sending tremors through the chamber walls and into the surrounding soil. Experts, brought in under strict secrecy, concluded that the object was not dormant. It was active. Whatever was buried on Oak Island was not treasure. It had been placed there for containment. This marked a shift from historical curiosity to something dangerously alive. In the hours following the artifact's activation, the military presence on Oak Island expanded dramatically. Satellite uplinks and mobile command centers were brought in, creating a fully secured, classified perimeter. The artifact's pulse was recorded globally. Signals detected by ocean sensors in the Pacific, glacial monitors in Antarctica, and electromagnetic detectors across Europe and Africa. It was as if the artifact had awakened similar objects worldwide. This was no ordinary discovery. Leaked reports indicated that Oak Island's artifact had released a data burst, encrypted and transmitted off-planet.
To verify the findings disappeared or had their work erased. The implications were staggering. Had humanity uncovered something meant to protect it, or something capable of summoning a global threat? A coordinated blackout was enacted, and the story was buried under unrelated news headlines. Oak Island remains under quarantine, controlled by both Canadian and U.S. authorities. Every scientist who worked on the artifact has been relocated to secure, undisclosed facilities. Rumors continue to circulate about warnings contained within the artifact's pulse. The true nature of Oak Island was never about gold or treasure. It was a trigger for something much larger, a potential chain of events capable of affecting the entire planet. Other ancient devices might still exist, waiting to awaken. Oak Island, once a site of historical intrigue and treasure hunting, has now entered a stage far beyond human comprehension. Whatever lies beneath the surface may hold secrets that humanity is not ready to face, and the island's story is far from over. Even as the artifact was secured and Oak Island remained under quarantine, the natural world around the island began to react in ways that defied explanation. Birds that usually roosted near the coastline flew off in large, panicked flocks. Deer and smaller animals vanished into the dense forest, and even the tidal movements near the swamp behaved strangely, pulling back from the shore in ways locals had never witnessed. Fishermen in nearby waters reported unusual currents and sudden temperature drops, making navigation dangerous. It was as if the island itself had shifted, responding to the disturbance beneath its surface. Inside the quarantine zone, the Laguna team was under strict surveillance. They were not allowed to speak publicly, and communication with the outside world was cut off completely. Every piece of equipment they had brought with them was either seized or monitored by government personnel. Rick Laguna, normally calm and collected during even the most dangerous digs, admitted to feeling a creeping unease he could not explain. The artifact's rhythmic pulse seemed to echo through the very ground they stood on, and even seasoned crew members reported a sense of being watched, as if something invisible, yet aware, was observing every move. Experts brought in under extreme secrecy tried to study the artifact, but standard scientific tools seemed ineffective. Magnetometers, seismic sensors, and electromagnetic detectors all went haywire whenever the object was approached. Attempts to measure its composition were thwarted by readings that fluctuated unpredictably. Some theorists suggested the object might be generating a field or energy of unknown origin. Others worried that the artifact was not passive. It could be sensing the presence of humans, reacting to movement, or even communicating through methods entirely beyond current understanding. Every test deepened the mystery instead of solving it. Meanwhile, the media began to notice unusual activity on the island, though little was reported officially.
Satellite imagery showed rows of armored vehicles, temporary structures, and unusual light patterns at night. Social media users speculated endlessly, and amateur Oak Island enthusiasts shared theories that ranged from plausible to absurd. Yet, despite public curiosity, no one could approach the island, and no information was released by authorities. This complete lockdown created an air of tension and fear, with some online communities even joking or seriously warning that the island might now be a danger zone, not just a treasure site. As the days passed, whispers among the team and some leaked reports painted an even more unsettling picture. The artifact's pulse was not random. It seemed to follow a pattern, almost like a heartbeat. Some scientists suggested that this pulse might be a signal, a communication mechanism, or even a form of stored energy waiting to be released. Others were more cautious, warning that trying to interpret or manipulate the artifact could trigger unknown consequences. The very fact that the government responded so rapidly, with both U.S. and Canadian forces collaborating, suggested that whatever was unearthed had implications far beyond Oak Island itself. Inside the quarantine zone, team members described an almost oppressive atmosphere. Even in the presence of heavily armed guards and high-tech containment, the feeling of tension never lifted. Equipment malfunctioned mysteriously, digital readouts froze, and lights dimmed without cause. Some crew members claimed to hear faint, low-frequency sounds echoing through the underground tunnels, a noise that seemed impossible to locate. These disturbances, while subtle, reinforced the idea that the artifact was not just a historical object. It was active, potentially dangerous, and utterly unknown. Historical researchers who were later allowed limited access to the island noted that the construction of the chamber surrounding the artifact was baffling. The stone walls were cut with precision tools that appeared far more advanced than what would have been available at any known period in Oak Island's history. The level of planning and engineering suggested deliberate containment, not casual storage. Whatever or whoever placed the artifact there intended for it to remain hidden,
Undisturbed for centuries. This level of sophistication contradicted centuries of historical assumptions about the island's builders, forcing experts to reconsider all prior theories. The implications for the wider world became clearer when further analysis suggested the artifact's pulse might not be isolated to Oak Island. Sensors in oceans, polar regions, and even distant archaeological sites registered fluctuations coinciding with the artifact's activity. Some experts speculated that this object was part of a larger network, perhaps remnants of a lost civilization or advanced technology hidden by ancient people. Theories abounded, ranging from extraterrestrial involvement to unknown pre-Columbian civilizations. Every new discovery seemed to deepen the mystery instead of providing clarity. Inside the quarantine, the team's daily life became tense and surreal. They were not allowed to leave the island, communicate externally, or even document their work freely. Meals, sleep, and basic routines were strictly monitored. Any deviation was met with warnings, reinforcing the sense that the artifact's power or danger was taken seriously by authorities. Psychological stress became a serious concern. Crew members reported vivid dreams, feelings of being watched, and moments of intense unease. Some even claimed to see strange visual phenomena in peripheral vision, fleeting shadows or distortions that vanished when directly observed. While speculation ran rampant, authorities maintained a strict information blackout, only reinforcing the public's fear and fascination. Back on the island, attempts to interact with the artifact were limited to remote and automated tools. Robotic probes, cameras, and sensors were deployed, but readings were inconsistent. Instruments that normally functioned reliably were affected by unexplained interference. The artifact's pulse created microvibrations, affecting even nearby equipment.
some devices began to register signals or data that could not be identified. Engineers and scientists struggled to interpret what they were seeing, realizing that standard methods
Observation might not apply to this object. The psychological impact on the team grew as days turned into weeks. Isolation, the unknown nature of the artifact, and the inability to communicate externally created high levels of stress. Some members became withdrawn, while others developed a hyper-focus on monitoring the artifact's behavior. Even simple tasks required heightened caution, as if every movement could trigger an unforeseen reaction. Rick Lagina noted that the artifact seemed aware of human presence, responding in subtle ways that suggested an intelligence or adaptive mechanism beyond comprehension. Outside experts, allowed only brief access under extreme supervision, were equally baffled. Geologists, metallurgists, and historians were unable to categorize the alloy or understand the precision of the artifact's construction. Its design defied all known historical and technological references. The complexity suggested knowledge that humans should not have possessed at the time it was buried. Some experts proposed that this could be evidence of an entirely lost civilization, or an advanced culture erased from history, leaving only cryptic artifacts behind. As security tightened, the quarantine of Oak Island became one of the most closely monitored sites in North America. Satellite imagery, patrols, and classified monitoring created a perimeter that extended far beyond the island itself. Any unauthorized vessel or person approaching the coastline was immediately intercepted. Local residents who had lived near Oak Island for decades reported the sudden transformation from a quiet, historical site to a heavily militarized, restricted area. The complete isolation was unprecedented in Oak Island's history and suggested the seriousness of the discovery beneath the surface. Even as scientists continued their studies, anomalies persisted. Small tremors, magnetic fluctuations, and subtle environmental disturbances kept the team alert. Observers noted that the artifact seemed to influence local weather patterns, with sudden fog, wind shifts, and temperature drops occurring near the containment site. Crew members reported odd phenomena, such as reflections behaving strangely or shadows stretching in unnatural ways. Each anomaly reinforced the idea that Oak Island's artifact was far more than a static historical object. It was active, responsive, and unpredictable. The more the team studied the artifact, the stranger things became. Even seemingly harmless tools started to behave unpredictably. Cameras that were pointed directly at the object recorded static and flickering images that sometimes showed shapes or patterns that weren't physically present. Sensors meant to track temperature or pressure readings would spike without explanation, often correlating with the artifact's rhythmic pulses. Crew members noticed that even when they stepped back, the room seemed to vibrate slightly underfoot, like a quiet heartbeat coming from deep within the ground. Everyone began to realize that this was not a normal historical discovery. It was something alive, or at least something that reacted to life in ways no one could understand. The island took on an eerie quality. The air felt heavier, and the fog rolled in thickly, sometimes glowing slightly in the moonlight. Team members reported seeing faint lights moving deep in the forest, which vanished when they tried to approach. Equipment left unattended would sometimes appear to have shifted slightly when revisited. Even the soundscape changed. Usually, the island was filled with the quiet hum of crickets and the occasional splash from the nearby shore. But after the artifact was unearthed, subtle, low-frequency vibrations could be felt in the ground, and faint humming noises
seemed to emanate from the soil itself. Some described it as the sound of a faint, distant engine, but there was no machinery present. Despite these unnerving phenomena, the team continued their research. Remote probes were deployed into the chamber